Hi.
Hi.
Okay, can I have you do just a quick introduction?
Yeah, my name's Amy. I have been working with tarot cards for around 10 years now. I do readings professionally through Well Oiled, and I teach classes there as well. And I know Sora. We've worked together. She's great. I love her.
Thank you. Amy also does my Reiki.
I do. Yeah, I do that too.
And so we were just talking. We were doing the Wildwood tarot deck, and you said you haven't used this one before.
I have not even seen, I've seen the box, but I've never even seen inside the box before. So this is new for me.
Cool. I think as a reader you'll find this one really interesting. And they're really beautiful cards. Okay. Thank you. For this reading, we are using the World Tree Spread. There are 3 spreads in this guidebook, and this is the one we are working with. Usually when I'm doing a reading for somebody, you won't see me have the spread out because I work with ones I've memorized, unless it's a custom and we've put it together specifically for the reading. But for this one, I'm going to have it in the background because part of the focus here is seeing how much we like these spreads and who might be interested in this kind of reading. So we talk about the guidebooks when I do the YouTube, this on YouTube, when we do the deck review videos. So we are also just going to have this one here so we can get to know more about the deck and more about the spread. And I'm going to have the cards facing you, but I can edit it and post so that they go in the same direction as the guidebook.
Yeah, whatever you need to do.
All right. So I am going to ask you to cut the deck. Thank you. So we are starting with number 1, roots. What is the root of the issue? Ooh, this is the journey. Got the crows starting out strong. Make sure it's on camera.
Oh my God, shut up. I have to tell you something. Okay, I'm going to be very... Is this...
This is the death card.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep.
The Major Arcana has a lot of different naming, but it does line up numerically. So this is a card of transformation and change. For me, as roots, whereas the root of the issue, something needs to change. It is time for an ending and a new beginning and a transition, transformation. We always love to see crows, ravens, because they are wise, they are loyal. In this case, they are specifically assisting in helping to decide what changes need to be made.
Can I tell you something?
Absolutely.
So, last night when I got home, there was a cloud of crows flying from behind my house all the way back in the distance and over my house, and there were clouds and clouds of them. There were hundreds of them, and they kept moving for hours. They were constantly coming, and there's only one other time in my life that did happen, and it was 11 years ago, almost exactly 11 years ago, and I'd never seen anything like it before, and these are the only 2 times I've ever seen it. That was the catalyst of the end of a toxic relationship the first time that it happened. And I knew it was significant when I saw it again last night. So that's just okay. That's
very cool.
That's special.
Also, if you read the description that I will put down below, your handles for social media are messages from the crows.
Yes. The crows are very significant to my spiritual journey. Very.
Love it. Next, we look at the branches. What are the possibilities of the issue? So I really like the way this spread is laid out, because even though that's the second one, they have roots as the bottom and then branches as the top, and it's like we get the beginning of the situation, or the base, and then the details, and then they move inward to kind of have everything come together. I think that's really cool. So here we have the Four of Stones, or the Four of Pentacles. This is a card of conservation. This is a card of guarding your resources. Not being too stingy with them, but also not just going through them as quickly as you can. To me, these make perfect sense, because when you have to make a change, you have to be ready for whatever comes up in these changes. So you need to have some savings if we're talking about money. You need to be banking your energy, making sure you have time for yourself. But I also like it as the reminder that just because we need to save and store our resources and make sure we have all these resources and building blocks, we also need to take care of ourselves. You guys spend a little bit of time, energy, effort on yourself, or things just become too much too quickly. Next we have East. What do you take with you? Oh, look at that. That's perfect when we're talking about change. So, with us, we're going to take the Queen of Arrows, or the Queen of Swords. I have read for Aimee a few times, and I feel like the Queen of Swords always shows up. Mm-hmm. She is all about observing. She looks at what's going on around her. She learns about everything around her, while only giving a little bit of herself. To me, in terms of what do you take with you, that would be the wisdom, the experience, whatever it is that needs to end. You take the things you've learned about yourself, you take the relationships that are beneficial, where you were able to share, the people who you have some sort of connection with, because with this card, I always feel like she serves as a warning to make sure that you do have somebody you share pieces of yourself with, but that's not everybody. Mm-hmm. So to me, there's that, keeping that experience and that wisdom. Mm-hmm. And she is the swan.
Mm-hmm. The Queen of Swords is also one of the main signifier, like my signifier card. Like that's the card that represents me in the deck most often.
So you need to take yourself. Stay true to who you are. Stay true to yourself, as you not just go for change for the sake of change, but go for the change that helps you be your most authentic self.
Maintain my authenticity, yeah.
Next we have number 4 is West. What do you leave behind you? The Forest Lovers, or the Lovers. It's interesting because the Lover comes with things like contracts and choices between two very distinct paths. Leaving behind is essentially not looking back. If you look at choosing one path over another, it's very much, once you've made that decision, not to question it. But also in terms of things like contracts, this can be not renewing agreements. This can be leaving behind anybody that your contract is ended with. We talk about contracts and soul contracts sometimes in readings, and one of the things that is important for us to realize that we tend to forget now that we have so many ways of contacting people is that our journeys with other people are not inherently forever. we have this tendency now, instead of letting relationships, and that can be any kind of relationships, friendship, business, romantic, we have this idea that once we have met somebody, we have to be whatever we are to that person forever, when really sometimes we just need a lesson. Sometimes we're only meant to have a few years together. But with the advent of things like Facebook, which make it really easy to keep in touch with people we might not otherwise, and that's great, it also makes us feel like we have to stay in contact with people and situations that we've outgrown. So to me, to have the lovers be the card of what we need to leave behind, it's that idea of a clean break. And not trying to keep things going because they're already going. And that's really cool for me with death, because when we look at death, if it were to be in a negative position, in a spread, or in reverse, we have that fear of change, that stagnation, that rot that comes with letting things happen for too long. So the Lovers just says to me, clear cutting, once the contract has expired, let it be. Next we have South. What do you hope for? That's sweet. So we're gonna move this. And we have the Hooded Man, or the Hermit. Time alone. Some time to really reflect and maybe find yourself again. This isn't to suggest that you have lost yourself as a whole, but maybe there's a piece of yourself, or maybe there is something that you've been working towards, or that you've been healing, and while it's really nice, it's almost like you don't recognize yourself in this position. But it could also just be hoping for some time alone to reflect. We have too many responsibilities, especially if we're making a change, and so we're piling more responsibilities on. It can be really hard to have those moments to just reflect and think.
Yeah.
So next we have North. What do you fear? And this one goes, bring the roots back, goes right above the roots. The 10 of Arrows, or the 10 of Swords. Instruction.
Who doesn't fear that?
The 10 of Swords is a card of endings and not happy ones. And that reminds me, I have to show you something later.
Who's not afraid of the 10 of Swords? Like,
right?
That's the person. Damn.
I spend all
I
my
don't
time
want to get stabbed 10 times. You're right.
The 10 of Swords. The funny thing, though, and this is why I like to defend the 10 of Swords, even though I totally understand why it would be anyone's big fear. The 10 of Swords is ultimately about loss, but it is the loss of something that we shouldn't have. I think of it as the boiling frog card. And I don't remember where I learned this, but a frog will not jump into boiling water. It will, however, get into regular water that you can warm up, and they will not leave if it warms up incrementally. As such, the reason the 10 of Swords is so hard is because we think we still want to be somewhere, because we remember how good it was. But we are in a situation we never would have put ourselves in to begin with. We put ourselves there when it was good, and that's what we're holding on to as it goes. So in relationships, this can be the one that started lovey-dovey, always seeing eye to eye, and then little remarks start. Or you just find that you don't have as much you're interested in. The feelings are basically gone, but you remember how much you wanted to be there. The reason the 10 of Swords is so hard is because it represents a commitment that we thought would be longer term. Back to contracts, back to things not changing. We have held on so long to this idea of what we started for that we haven't seen all the bad changes, and it makes it hard to make the good ones. Back to, it's almost the darker side of the Death card. The Death is changing. closing chapters, starting new ones, and the Ten of Swords is the harsher ending aspect that you need. So also the fear there would be just that hard stop and that losing something that you were working towards. So yeah, totally, totally valid fear. But again, I love to defend the Ten of Swords because this loss is of something that really isn't great for us anymore, and there's so much better out there for you. So next we have the Way Through the Woods. These to the side, and I will show it together in the way it unfolds at the end. But I want the cards to be close enough that you can see them on the camera. So this is the south, and then we have the Way Through the Woods under that. That is 10, or the Wheel of Fortune. If you were to Google this one, you would most likely get good fortune, good luck, and that is absolutely part of it. But in my tradition, it is more about the change in luck and the idea of trending upwards. It hits on the idea that cycles, life is always going through different cycles. It goes highs and lows, but if you are very mindful of where you're at, you can hold on to the highs a little bit longer, you can buffer the lows a little bit, and therefore it always trends up. This is my card of This Too Shall Pass. In terms of the way through, that would be faith. Having faith in yourself and the universe that the lows give us the information we need to make the highs better, and that we're always going in a better direction as long as we are mindful. Back to the idea of the hermit or the hooded man, you have to have time for that reflection to be able to see it. So hopefully we do get more of that. And next we have the Wisdom of the World tree. This is the hidden wisdom, the pieces that should help, guidance, advice. We have the Knight of Arrows, or the Knight of Swords.
A lot of swords energy.
A lot of swords energy, a lot of head energy. That is the hawk. The hawk, I don't know in the Celtic tradition that this comes from, if this is true, but in others, the hawk speaks to omens and looking for signs. It wouldn't surprise me if that is true with the Celtic traditions this is coming from, because the Knight of Arrows or the Knight of Swords is the one I call the philosopher. It's the seeking out of answers, always going for the truth. The truth doesn't have to be a big philosophical truth. It's more about, back to alignment, it's more about finding the answers about yourself. So the hidden wisdom here is almost that the reason for the situation we're still in, that the Ten of Swords needs to come in and end, but is hoping that you can do it on your own, is that the situation was there to teach you about yourself. And once you have those answers, once you can gather them and reflect upon them, you should see that the path for change opens right up and you can go right into that next chapter. Theme-wise, it is very much beginnings and endings. Directly using the ending or necessary ending to catapult yourself into the next piece. Do you have any questions or anything you want clarified?
I feel like I want to clarify the Lovers card, but I also feel like I might want to clarify the Wheel, so I don't want to ask for too much.
Those are both good. I'll do this. So the Lovers was in the What do we leave behind? Okay, I'm going to ask you to find a card. You can shuffle it. You don't have to. Whichever one feels right. We're going to start with the Lovers. Leaving behind contracts and paths that you have outgrown. Thank you. We have the Great Bear. Or Judgment. And Judgment is not about being judgmental. It is very much about looking at patterns. So the things we need to leave behind in this case would actually be judgment. Things like shame. One of the big, in my traditions, one of the key aspects is looking at the past objectively and just saying, okay, whenever I've done A, B has happened. Whenever I do C, D has happened. I want more B, less D, and not, why didn't I do this? Why did I do this? Not looking back at mistakes that you may have made in a shameful way because the only reason you knew they weren't the right step was because you took a step. Instead, honoring yourself for being brave enough, like the bear, to take that step and find out. A lot of us are really good about understanding that other people make mistakes because they didn't know until they'd tried it. But we judge ourselves with the knowledge we have now. But you can't have that knowledge without making those choices and finding out whether or not they were the right ones. This is the last step in the Fool's journey before the world. And it is very much the cleanup where it's pretty much data analysis. Looking back, being like, okay, this is how I got here. This is where I want to be. I need more of this, less of this. And then rolling through that cycle. So in terms of leaving behind, it really, for me, would be any sort of fear or doubt or shame that you put yourself in a position that wasn't where you wanted to be because you wouldn't have known that without taking that chance and making that experience yours.
In terms of leaving things behind, since it's combined with the Lovers, might it also be talking about other people who bring harsh judgments to me?
Absolutely. That would be the end of your contract with them.
Okay. Cool.
For the wheel, we have the Nine of Vessels or the Nine of Cups. Here they call it generosity, but it is a card of contentment and peace. Now, the wheel was the way through. So that's where we were talking about having faith in yourself. But as a way through a harsh situation or a situation where you need change, especially if we are talking about judgment and people that we need to leave behind, finding the things you do love is not only the way through, but the way forward. It's essentially going towards the light, taking the little pieces, the little things that make you happy and figuring out how you get more of them. And unlike the very objective judgment, this is a very subjective emotional card. But it is also a card of confidence. We need to be confident in ourselves to be able to be really comfortable in our relationships, to believe that we deserve the things we are going towards. So it is a very different card that is kind of showing the light side of the same idea. focusing on not what you loved about the situation, relationship, thing that needs to change, but what you love about other things, or what you did love about it that you can find in a situation or a relationship that doesn't have all of the other stuff, where you're not holding on to a little piece, but rather using it to create that glow. It is the card of wish fulfillment. So there's also an idea of understanding what it is you're wishing for. And wishing for not just what would be good. This is more than a goal. This is a dream. This is thinking bigger. And taking small steps in that direction.
Yeah, I always say with that card, and like in relationship to anything that falls into the category of magic for me, that like wishing or magic that's not for the practical stuff. It's not for the stuff that is likely to happen, right? Because it's likely to happen. It's for the stuff that feels impossible, right?
Right.
It's for the stuff that you don't feel like is likely in the world that we exist in. It's for big things.
So you need to get out of this little cave and go with his meditation bowls.
With the meditation bowls. Yeah. That's interesting. This got me all, that got me all shook up from the start. Yeah, well, just because in the image of what I came home to last night with the crows, I was like, that's okay. What's our shadow card?
We have the Three of Bows, or the Three of Wands. Fulfillment. Spiritual growth. So we have a card of spiritual growth. So one of the things I say about this card that I don't think it's unique to my tradition, but it's also, I think it's one of the lesser known nuances of this card, is taking a step forward, but understanding that whatever path you take, there's going to be a lesson there. It comes right after the Two of Wands, which is a card of making choices. And that's the one where I tend to tell people that either choice is right because either choice is wrong, because you have to do both of them. So the 3 comes right after that. So there's that reminder that whatever path you chose that seemed like the wrong choice was absolutely the right choice because you needed both of them. So this kind of growth comes from having picked up the side quest or the lessons or whatever you needed from that other path, back to the Lovers. And that's what you take with you. You leave the path, you leave the stuff you didn't need, and you grab that information because it will make this new path that much more brighter, that much more bright. I speak English. And it will make the new path make more sense. It'll be easier to appreciate because you won't feel like a piece is missing. You needed that piece from the path that seemed like the wrong one. So this growth, this evolution comes from getting those pieces back together. If that makes sense.
Yeah. That's fascinating. What position was the Hanged Man? That's what I want. Or
Yes.
not, the Hooded Man.
The Hooded Man was what we hope for.
We hope for. Sure, yeah.
Put the tree back together. We've got Death at the bottom. Its roots. Branches. Where
The lovers. Yeah.
West clarifier. What do you hope for? Wrong order. What do you hope for?
We're gonna get there. I'm gonna make it happen.
What do you fear? The way through. The wisdom of the world tree. And the shadow.
Tall spread.
Yeah. I'm going to do it this way just to be true to the picture. But if I were to do this one again, I would probably put them sideways. Get that.